From the studios of Chillicothe High School, this is your CAVS News Show.
Hello, welcome back to CAVS News. I'm Logan McCord.
And I'm Brooke Smith, back with your CAVS News Update.
After a long overdue absence from the show, CHS finally has some sports headed your way. To talk about our up-and-coming sports schedule is Christopher Hucks with this week's sports update.
Thanks, Logan. Spring sports are finally starting up. Baseball, softball, track, tennis, and lacrosse are all underway for the 2014 season. Our varsity baseball team has started off the season 2-2, but 3 of their games have been postponed to this point. Their most recent game was played at the VA Memorial Stadium, the home of the Chillicothe Paints. They lost a close game to Fairfield Union 7-4. The next home game is scheduled for Monday, April the 14th at 5. They also play at home on Wednesday the 16th, Friday the 18th, and Saturday the 19th. Come out and support our baseball team next week because you'll have plenty of chances to do so. The ladies softball team has had a lot of schedule changes so far this year. They've had to cancel 2 games, postpone 4, and have only played 3 games thus far. They're 2-1 so far, and most recently beat league powerhouse Miami Trace 13-8. The girls will be coming back for a 5-game home stretch starting on Monday the 14th. The tennis teams have also postponed a couple of matches this year, but gone 1-1 in the matches they've competed in. Buzz around the school says that we should expect a lot from the tennis team this season. The track teams have started strong as well, with the boys placing 1st and 2nd in 2 of their meets thus far, and the girls placing 4th and 2nd. Our track teams will participate in the Stingle Invitational on Saturday the 12th at 10 a.m. The girls' club lacrosse team has started slow, losing their first 4 matches. They've tried to right the ship on Tuesday the 15th as they take on Little Miami. That's all for sports this week. Now let's go back to Brooke in the studio.
Thanks, Chris. 2 weeks ago, both Unionota and Zayden Trace High Schools held their spring musicals. Both were an extreme success. Now CHS's spring musical rehearsals are currently underway. This year's musical will be Thoroughly Modern Millie. The show will be performed on May 9th and 10th. Now to talk about many other things going on in our community, here's Bethany Truman with our community calendar.
Thanks, Brooke. There are always an abundance of events going on in our community. Here are a few you should check out. The Star Family Circus will be at the Ross County Fairgrounds April 12th and 13th. Come see your favorite cartoon characters, aerialists, jugglers, acrobats, and daredevils. Tickets are $10 and kids 12 and under get in free. Adina Mansion and Gardens will be having the Spring Awakening celebration on April 12th. Activities will include bird and nature walks, live entertainment, and art projects. The historical mansion will also be open for tours at regular rates all day long. Also at Adina, children ages 3 through 10 are welcome to participate in 19th century Easter egg fun on April 13th. Each child simply needs to boil and color 3 eggs and bring them as their entry fee. There will be 3 activities for the event: an Easter egg roll, an Easter egg toss, and an Easter egg tapping. Prizes will be awarded in each age group. The annual JC's Easter Egg Hunt will take place April 19th at 10 o'clock in Yaktangi Park. Be sure to bring all your little ones out for this wonderful annual event. That's all we have for this week. I'm Bethany Sherman. Have a wonderful week in Chillicothe. Now back to Logan in the studio.
Thanks, Bethany. We here at CAVS News like to keep you informed of what's going on in the community, but chances are, with the constant changing in the news, we might be missing a lot. CHS senior A.J. Carver took it upon himself to create a new segment where he would like to recap the world's news this week. Let's pitch it over to A.J. Carver with our new segment, The World Report.
Thanks, Logan. On March 8th, a Malaysian Airlines plane went missing while en route to Beijing. Flight 370 took off from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and went missing just shortly after at about 1:30 a.m. The plane, carrying 227 passengers and 12 crew members, has still yet to be found, although many countries have joined the search for the missing jetliner. A text sent to Malaysian Airlines to the victims' families stated that Malaysia Airlines deeply regrets that we have to assume, beyond any reasonable doubt, that MH370 has been lost and that none of those on board survived. It later goes on to say that we must now accept all evidence that suggests that the plane went down in the southern Indian Ocean. On March 22nd, a massive mudslide crashed down on the tiny town of Oso, Washington. The town has a population of around 200 and is located just an hour north of Seattle. In a matter of seconds, the wall of mud destroyed 49 houses and claimed at least 33 lives. A teen has been charged as an adult in a stabbing rampage at a Pennsylvania high school near Pittsburgh. Reports say that 20 students and a security guard were injured before the school's assistant principal tackled the student. This news comes just a week after a gunman opened fire at a Fort Hood military base in Texas, killing 3 people and injuring 16. The shooter, 34-year-old Ivan Lopez, died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Fort Hood also made the news in November of 2009 as a shooter opened fire, killing 13 people and injuring over 30. NATO has warned Russia over further intervention in Ukraine, and it would be a historic mistake with grave consequences. The U.S. and NATO have already announced many sanctions against Russia, and even NASA has announced that it will restrict ties with Russia. That's all the time we have for this week's World Report. I'm AJ Carver. Now back to Brooke.
Thanks, AJ. All of CHS is very proud this week to know that our own Frankie Whalen not only competed in, but won the Ohio War of 1812 Bicentennial Commission's Research Contest for grades 10 through 12. Whalen's project, which focused on more of Ohio's soldiers, including volunteers and what their life was like on the front lines, took the top prize of $3,000.
Jack Whalen, another CHS student, also received an honorable mention for his PowerPoint on naval battles. There were over 300 entries throughout the state of Ohio among students grades 10 through 12. However, Chillicothe was specifically mentioned in the program as one of the cities that submitted the most entries overall throughout the contest. There were a total of 6 finalists, and 2 of them came from CHS. Way to go!
When I first entered, first I heard about it from my dad at the Ohio Bicentennial Commission, which was commissioned by the Senate to commemorate the War of 1812 in Ohio. I thought it would be really interesting to get an idea about Ohio's history, Chillicothe's history, and really military history in Ohio. I was really interested in the time period, and of course the money was an incentive, $3,000. I knew it was going to be tough to research. In a couple weeks I had to research from several books and kind of look around for some information about Ohio and the War of 1812. I spent 2 weekends in January, Saturday and Sunday twice. The entire day I just sat down with a bunch of books and got encyclopedias, looked off the internet, and researched. Wrote the essay the second weekend, and I did most of my research the first weekend. So, my project was a traditional essay. It was 5 pages long and just under 2,000 words. I drew from several different sources to come up with a response to a prompt by the Ohio Bicentennial Commission on the War of 1812. Their prompt for students was to talk about military campaigns in Ohio involving Ohio volunteer soldiers and Ohio militia. So my essay most importantly talked about Ohio's involvement from the start of the War of 1812, which was occupation of Detroit and the Northwest, to the end of the War of 1812 for Ohio, which was when Tecumseh was killed at the Battle of the Thames, and the British retreated to Canada. And shortly thereafter, the United States and Britain signed the Treaty of Ghent, and the war came to a close. But I focused mostly on General William Hull, and William Henry Harrison's campaigns in Ohio, Northwest, specifically Indiana, Ohio, and Michigan. The project is important to me because as an individual who's grown up in a military community, I thought it was really important to kind of ascertain the origins of my community, of my lifestyle. Living all over the place is pretty cool, but the historical significance of where you're coming from, where your community's coming from, that was neat. And particularly living in Ohio now, it was really cool to learn about Ohio history, specifically in and around Chillicothe at that time period. I was very happy, I was really surprised because There were over 300 entries, and yes, he announced my name, and I still can't believe it. It's in the college fund right now. I think it's really impressive that a statewide contest, the two of us can come out in the top 6. Yeah, I thought being triplets, same house, same age, we ended up doing so well in the research contest. It says a lot about our academic excellence.
I guess going into the War of 1812, I guess obviously I figured it would have a large concentration on Ohio history in particular, but I was really interested to find out that it was a very emphasis on primary sources and newspaper articles and original documents from the time period, and I thought that was a really interesting factor that was one of the criteria for this project, and I wasn't expecting that, but I was pleasantly surprised to see that they were really taking into account the actual evidence from the time period, and I thought that was really cool to sort of immerse myself in that for the research project. I guess I'm interested in possibly exploring a future with the military, and I sort of jumped on the opportunity to be able to explore the military presence, both past and present, and possibly future in the area. And by examining some of the patterns over time in Ohio, and especially during the War of 1812, when the military presence in the area was most predominant, I found it was really interesting to me, as an outsider of Ohio, to sort of learn a little more about the history, learn a little more about the people, the places in Ohio, become a little more familiarized with things I didn't already know, and I found it interesting to step out of the comfort zone of normal history and focus on such a specific time period. I was pleasantly surprised at how interested it was, and I'm glad I got the opportunity. I was a little risque, and I decided to do a PowerPoint instead of the traditional essay, and I guess I'm rather comfortable with PowerPoints, so I decided to focus on making the War of 1812 experience in Ohio more relatable with a younger audience. I put a lot of graphics and considered putting music, but I avoided that, and so I felt like to modernize the War of 1812 and make it more relatable to a younger generation, that it would be a little more entertaining, hopefully a little more memorable through a PowerPoint and visuals. I gotta say, yes, I was surprised, pleasantly surprised that there were quite a few entries over the state of Ohio, and yes, I guess it was a little shocking to me, considering I felt that due to the huge amount of participants that the chances were very unlikely, but yeah, I guess it's very nice though.
Did you know that our very own Anthony Polakowski is on his way to making his 20th appearance in a segment, Did You Know, since the fall of 2013 when he first presented it? Congratulations, Anthony. Now, here's one of our favorite CAVS News segments, Did You Know?
Thanks, Brooke. This week is a very special episode for myself because it is my 20th episode of Did You Know? So this week, I'll be bringing you some facts involving the number 20. On July 27, 1720, the Russian Navy won its second important victory of the Battle of Grangam. On May 11, 1820, the launch of the HMS Beagle took place. This was the ship that carried young Charles Darwin on his scientific voyage to the Galapagos Islands. On March 19, 1920, the U.S. Senate rejected the Treaty of Versailles for the second time, refusing to ratify the League of Nations Covenant and thus maintaining its isolation policy. And finally, there is a man whose business is making predictions come true in 2020. One of his investment deals involves a Japanese robot-built and operated moon mining outpost. That's all for this week. I'm Anthony Polakowski. Now back to Brooke in the studio.
Thanks, Anthony. That's all for this week. I'm Logan McCord.
And I'm Brooke Smith. Have a wonderful and safe week in Chillicothe.